All right. Hello, everybody. I hope your bright and early Pacific time is going well. I'm going to give it like another 30 seconds or so for people to get into the room, and then I'm going to get started. Good morning. Can everybody see my screen okay? I think it's should be fine from before, but yeah, Gerard, that's what I'm that's what I got right here. There is a small chance I make a lightning refill of this cup at some point during this presentation. All right, let's get started. I was invited to VNarCon to present on my project called Project SAROS, and we'll get into it. But first, my name is Andrew Adams, and I'm going to tell you about myself if you don't know who I am very briefly. I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina. Now I live in the Seattle area. I work at Blue Origin. The shirt thing wasn't actually planned, but it's really convenient. I did high school and collegiate rocketry from 2012 through 2020. I also did it on my own. I finally got my L3 in March of 2022. My L1 in 2014 and L2 in 2019. If you were here at VNarCon last year, you might have seen me with Jenna on the HNS presentation. I'm the former HNS president. Now I'm on the HNS advisory board. And I love to hike and occasionally sing. And I got a few pictures. This is a picture of my first rocket team in high school. This was at the NASA SLI competition down in Huntsville. And we were all extremely excited. And we got our nose cone signed by the one and only Homer Hickam that day. And he told us to aim high. And so that is us taking a picture of us aiming high. And then I was on the MIT rocket team from 2014 to 2017. And this is a picture of us, 2014 to 2020. And this is a picture of us in 2017. David, the picture should come up in a little bit. And then this is a picture of me about a year and some change ago. This was after a New Shepard flight down in Texas. I work at Blue Origin now as a fluids engineer. And then I really like to hike. And this is me extremely excited and also extremely tired on the Enchantments, which is this very storied Seattle hike. So to get us started, we're still not seeing the pictures yet. Interesting. It should just be part of the slides. Oh, no pictures or presentation. Yikes. Thank you. I thought it carried over the shared window. Thank you very much. How about, now it pops up in the middle there. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you all. I did not quite understand the assignment. So I'll give you a little bit to take in these 4 pictures. Let me know if that fixed it. Nice, great, thank you. So first one up here in the top left from high school. Bottom left, MIT 2017. Bottom right, Blue Origin with New Shepard. Top right, me being a goofball far away from my car. All right, now that we're off and running, we're going to go back in time to August 21st, 2017. And if you all are Eclipse chasers, you know that this day was the day of the Great American Eclipse. And this was the day that a total solar eclipse went all the way across the US. It went from Oregon all the way down through South Carolina, and there was good weather for most of the day. I had been looking forward to this since middle school, y'all. I had picked up a book in the library and was like, this is going to happen. And I had staked out a spot, and then eventually had to abandon it. I went to see this. I went to Greenville, South Carolina, where at Furman University, they had their stadium open and there were lots of people. And so during the eclipse, the moon covers the sun as seen from the earth. And so there's a partial eclipse for about an hour before totality. And during that partial eclipse, you can see it like through the leaves. It's kind of wild because each set of leaves is kind of like a pinhole camera. And so an image of the sun goes through, but usually it's just a dot or just a blotchy dot. But now they're like blotchy crescents, which is very, very cool. And then I tried to take a picture of it with my phone because I just wanted to see what would happen. And I got a little lens artifact on the bottom that revealed the partial eclipse. And as we're getting closer and closer to time, we're all sitting in the stands, and like they're keeping track of it on their solar telescope on the Jumbotron. And then it was totality. And I'm glad that I'm still sitting before you today and my head didn't completely explode, because it was amazing. And I tried to take a couple pictures for like 10 seconds. And this is the best one that I got, but not for long. So fast forward to October 14th, 2022, when I posted my first video for the project that I'm here to talk to you about today, which is Project SAROS. And Project SAROS is pretty simple. I want to use rockets to take video of the next 2 solar eclipses from the US from the air, which is like, it's really just me combining 2 of the things that I love most, right? I, did a lot of rocketry in high school and college, and like did a bunch on my own, and I love it. And I love to go watch solar eclipses. This is like the definition of a passion project. And I'm just super, super, super excited to try and put these 2 things together into something that I hopefully love even more. The second goal of Project SAROS is to share and document the process on YouTube to inspire at least one person to chase what they love as well. And then last, again, this is the literal definition of a passion project. So I don't want to destroy myself trying to hit this cosmic deadline, right? I guess I could technically get 2 shots, but I get 1 shot to pull this off, right? And I will take a performance hit if it means that I'm able to do it and I'm able to have fun with it. So these are the three things I'm trying to accomplish with Project SAROS. So the first of these 2 solar eclipses is on October 14th, 2023. It is an annular solar eclipse, which means we'll go over this again later, but an annular solar eclipse is when the moon covers the sun, but not all the way. There's sort of a ring, what people like to call it, a ring of fire. If you're on the path of annularity, you can see this ring of fire. You can see the moon over the sun, but not covering it all the way. I will say, if you're going to see an annular solar eclipse, you will need eclipse glasses for the entire viewing of the eclipse. Please be safe. But this is the path of annularity across the US. I hope this picture is clear. So my goal is to go about right here to Black Rock, because this was the original inspiration of it. This was the moment I knew that I should do something, because Black Rock is a storied amateur rocket location, and the opportunity for these 2 things to come together is quite rare. And for the total eclipse on April 8th, 2024, it goes from South Texas up to Maine instead of the previous, which ends in South Texas. And I don't yet have a launch site, and we'll go over that later. These 2 paths also cross somewhere. I think it's somewhere in Texas. I should have written that down. That's a fun fact. All right. So what are the major challenges of this project? What are the questions I'm trying to answer? So what kind of cameras am I going to use? How am I going to capture this? How will I get the timing right? Because you're literally, like, the annularity or totality lasts about 4 minutes, best case, and it's really fleeting. And so getting the timing exactly right is going to probably be the hardest challenge um, of this whole project. And then how much time do I have to pull this off? Um, and where am I going? So we're going to go into each of these a little bit. But in order to figure out what kind of cameras I should use, I want to figure out what exactly am I trying to capture at all on camera. So I want to capture the moon's shadow going across the surface of the Earth. Like it's like the thing about this is that the shadow is like this. The sun is better captured from the ground. Like everybody has seen video of rockets coming down. It's extremely shaky, and the sun is really small in the sky. So I think my real goal is to get an incredible video of the entire landscape and of the shadow and what it does as it's passing over the Earth's landscape. And these animations are a little bit out of order. So if we take the annular eclipse October 14th first, we can see that I'm trying to see the antumbra, which is going to be incredibly hard because unlike the umbra is like black shadow, right? The umbra is like, this is going to make a lot more sense when I show the pictures, but the umbra is like a black oval that like crosses over, and the antumbra does not have that sharp edge that the umbra does. It's the darkest part of the shadow, but it still doesn't have that black edge because if we consider the sun on the left, the antumbra still receives some of the sun's rays from this side. Can y'all see I hope y'all can see my cursor. I wonder if I can get no. The antumbra receives some of the sun's rays from anyway, so it's not nearly as dark as the umbra, but it's still the darkest part of the shadow. So we're trying to capture a shadow gradient. This picture is a little bit misleading to just show the difference between the different types of shadow here. But really for this one, we're showing, oh, thanks, David. This one, we're really going for a shadow gradient across the surface. And so altitude is a big deal. Whereas for a total solar eclipse, the umbra actually hits the surface and we can see that black oval moving across the landscape. And so since and this is going to be a little bit more of a challenge because we're once we're in the air and the shadow comes over us, we're taking those cameras and then immediately putting them in shadow. And so their dynamic range is going to be a really big deal. So I have some pictures to try and help us all visualize it a little bit. On the left, we have some satellite imagery of an annular eclipse. So you can see the oval of the moon's shadow is huge. It covers, like a sixth-ish of the Earth's surface. It's really big, and the antumbra is a lot smaller. And you can see the middle to the outside has some serious gradient that we're trying to capture. And then this is from the Discover spacecraft. You can find this on NASA Goddard's website. And this is a picture from one of Jim Jarvis's flights to about where I want to go altitude wise. And so picture in your mind's eye like the darkest portion of the shadow, but you could still kind of see the landscape on one side, and then you're getting less and less and less dark as you go out towards the edge of the horizon. Which I haven't seen a lot of annular eclipse footage from balloons or anything yet, so I'm imagining that it will be an incredible shot. But there is footage of total solar eclipses all over the place. So this is a picture this is from a YouTube video where Carykh goes and flies into a total solar eclipse from the airplane. And you can see the edge of the moon's shadow in the atmosphere. You can see the edge of the umbra on the surface of the clouds. You can see the sunset all around. It's just awesome. And this is probably, look, this is better than I'm gonna get if I'm being totally honest. This is 108. This is a composite image of I want to say it's over 1,000 images stacked on top of each other because this guy John Carmichael convinced some Southwest pilots who are flying exactly the right direction to like take a winding path over the Snake River, and he was able to capture this amazing shot from an airplane. And you see the same thing. You see the moon shadow on the atmosphere. You see the moon shadow on the surface. And this is of the order of what I want to capture. Like this again is a like composite, and he got to sit down on an airplane and like shoot this, and we're doing this autonomously from a rocket. So grain of salt, but definitely inspiration. This is a balloon shot from the Total Eclipse 2017 from the Eclipse ballooning project, and again you can see the moon's umbra on the surface. And this also shows where dynamic range will be crucial, because this was an autonomous shot. This is on a balloon, nobody's controlling it, and it like gets really blown out here. It's an incredible shot, but still it gets blown out on the the sun's light is still scattering through the atmosphere to the camera. And so really this is the big challenge for the total eclipse, is getting this dynamic range right. And then this is a short clip. I'm actually going to try and turn sound off for this clip. Oh, that's not starting at the right time. Can I start this at a later time? Oh, no, I cannot. Let me, what is this? No. Well, this let me control it last time I tried this, and it is not letting me control it. So I'm just going to play it. It's not a very long video. This is a video of a time lapse of a partial solar eclipse. And I really want to skip to the partial eclipse part, because it's going to be a whole like minute and a half, and I am a teeny bit impatient. I'm going to do it manually, because the controls are all the way down here. Okay. And I thought I was clever. Okay. That's fine. One more time, and we're just going to look at it on the small screen. Sound off so you can hear me. All right, so now this is the time lapse of the partial eclipse, and they have the solar disk here. The moon is slowly covering the sun, and the shadow is slowly covering everything, but we never get totality, and we still have that much dynamic range. And this is part of the reason I'm pretty convinced that we're going to get something really cool from the Black Rock shot, because I'm going to play this section of video again. Because the moon never fully covers the sun here, and it still goes from like all daylight very slowly into like, oh, is it sunset? And there's that sunset on the edges again, and it gets this dark, and then it comes back, and that's still just a partial eclipse. That's not even an annular eclipse. That's not a total eclipse. So I'm dead set on going all the way. And now I'm gonna, don't worry, you don't have to read all that text all at once. All right, so with all of this in mind, here's what I want to do for footage. So for the first flight, I want to get 360 footage for sure. I have been working on deploying a 360 camera from a rocket, with just a 3-inch rocket called Cascade. I'm going to show some footage from that in a little bit. And I think this is a uniquely rocket experience. I guess you can get it from a balloon, but being able to see the parachutes and the rocket parts coming down with you during a solar eclipse, woof, that's going to be so cool. So for the annular eclipse, it's going to take a long time for the shadow to change. And the thing it might be harder. It might be hard to see the shadow gradient across the surface because the moon's shadow is so big. So the key with the annular eclipse is I want time lapse. I want to watch the shadow change across the surface. Um, and then yeah, and that's because everything's going to be changing so much more slowly than it will for the total solar eclipse. Um, we'll see. But that's oh, okay. So the time lapse is going to drive us to go higher, a lot higher, and since we're going a lot higher, we might be able to get some blackness on the horizon as a treat. Um, we can see, hopefully, we can see the shadow gradient in stills. This is sort of like descending priority levels here. We may or may not be able to see it, but I would really like to. And then the cameras are going to be minimal because we're going for altitude. We want additional flight time to get that time lapse to be longer. I am very much expecting to have a fairly long hike at the end of this um, first flight because I really want to see how the shadow changes on the ground. For the second flight, for the total eclipse, I also want to get 360 footage. And I want to see the umbra in the stills in the video. I want to catch the shadow moving in and out of frame. And that's a much more distinct event than the annular eclipse, which is time lapse for changing time lapse for the shadow. Dynamic range is going to be a big deal, as David put in the chat. Thank you, David. Dynamic range is the range of tones between dark and light that the camera can capture, and that's going to be a much bigger deal for the total eclipse, where we have deep dark shadow and also extremely light edges, where the sun's light is still scattering into the camera from the atmosphere. Camera compatibility is going to be more important than altitude for the total eclipse. All I need for the total eclipse is to get the shadow coming in and out. It's 4 minutes. It's not very long. I don't have to go that high as long as I have a reasonably sized parachute. Excuse me. The rocket for flight 2 is going to be bigger than the rocket for flight 1 by a pretty significant margin because it's just going to be carrying cameras and it's not going to go nearly as high. All right, so this is a little bit of footage from one of my videos, and it's focused on the 360 camera. So I'm just going to play it straight, and then I'll go to a couple of stills. Oh, the sound is still off. Okay, that's fine. Man, silly me, not turning the sound off and then being like, why is the sound off? Sound is important for. All right, one more time. Thank you for bearing with me this morning. All right, I'm gonna mute you guys. Okay, I'm seeing in the chat there's no video sound. That also gives me an idea of how much delay there is. Okay, that's like a whole minute of delay. That's really good. Um, In that case, I'm gonna pause it. Man, really having a good time with getting this right. Um, all right. So I talk about it a little bit in the video, but deploying the 360 camera was a little bit harder than I thought because I had to turn it on before getting it out there. Um, presentations are rocket science. Yeah, they are. um, but I'm gonna go into this clip. I think my favorite clip from the 360 camera is right at the beginning when you can see everything deploy. You can see all the sections undershoot successfully, and you can see it under, and you can see this thing undershoot too. And then you can look straight down, and you can see where your launch site is. Even if it's half covered in soot, it's still a pretty sweet shot. So I still have some work to do, obviously, and I need to make sure that it's not, covered in soot on half of the camera. Um, but I have some stuff in the works for this. I can also, if y'all are interested during the Q&A, I can pull up this 360 footage and just like zip through it a little bit. Um, and note to self, I don't think I have any more audio. Okay, so what does this actually mean for the cameras I'm going to use? I'm going to use a 360 camera. The one that I showed was an Insta360 X3. I haven't picked a high dynamic range camera for the total Eclipse yet. There's a bit of a challenge with, like, of course, like packaging the camera. Plus, I want to try and get whatever cameras I use, I want to make sure they're pretty wide field of view. I don't think I'm going to have time to do any roll control or anything for this flight. So it's really important that I'm able to capture the shot from anywhere around the rocket. GoPros should probably be fine. Mostly judging from Kip's Mesos flight, the Hero 9 seemed to handle a pretty high dynamic range from the surface of the Earth to the blackness of space pretty well. There's also some modified GoPros. I love one of my favorites right now is this one from backbone.ca. They like refit GoPros with lens packages, and I might do something like this. Especially if I end up trying to capture the solar disk during the total eclipse, like try and get a shot of the sun. This is probably the way I'm going to go. I haven't found anything else that's like small enough that can capture the field of view, but that's big scope creep. All right, so we're going to switch from cameras and talk a little bit about timing. So I'm going to switch over to these awesome maps. Okay, so there is a very kind person who has put together these maps and posted them on the internet. They have the path of totality laid out across Google Maps. So I'm going to zoom in to BlackRock, and we're going to look at the timing a little bit. So for eclipses, there are 4 major points in the timeline. There's the start of the partial eclipse, when the edge of like the big moon's shadow hits where you are. There's the start of the annular eclipse, when the antumbra hits where you are. There's the maximum eclipse, which is when you are as deep as you're going to get in the antumbra. When you're on the edge, this happens a lot faster than if you're in the middle of the path of annularity. And then there's the end of that section where the antumbra leaves you, and then the annular eclipse ends. And then the end of the partial eclipse is when the edge of the penumbra leaves. So the partial eclipse lasts, and at this spot, the partial eclipse lasts about 1 hour and 14 minutes. I'm realizing the text labels as I'm speaking are really tiny. So the partial eclipse lasts about 1 hour and 14 minutes. The annular eclipse lasts like 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And then the partial eclipse after that lasts about an hour and 22 minutes. So the annular eclipse window is even shorter than we were saying before. This is a 2 minute, 20-second window. I've allocated 4 minutes because there's maybe a chance I can get closer. I can fly closer to the center of the path. Plus, everybody loves a little bit of margin as a treat. But that's sort of what we're dealing with for the annular eclipse. And for the total eclipse, I'm just gonna use one of the prospective launch sites. If you're part of Austin Area Rocketry Group, I've talked to a couple of you about this. I'm just using this as an example. There's a site in Hutto. This is probably not where I'm going to end up going, but I need some place to look at the timing. And it's kind of similar to BlackRock. Start a partial eclipse. Partial eclipse is about 1:18. The total eclipse is about 2 hours, or 2 hours, I wish. 2 minutes, 14 seconds when the umbra hits and then crosses and then leaves. And then the end of the partial eclipse is about 1:18 later. So there's going to be a lot of anticipation as the moon's shadow approaches, or the moon's umbra approaches, and it gets darker and darker very slowly, and it gets a little bit cooler. Like physically, you can see it, or you can feel it. It's very interesting. Okay. So that gives you an idea of the timing. It's very, very fast, especially for rocketry. So for capturing the eclipse, these are sort of my rules. I want to capture all of annularity or totality, depending on the eclipse. The capture period is during descent. It is not during ascent. It is during descent. And I put 30 seconds of landing margin here. That's because I forgot to update it. There's 30 seconds for the total eclipse flight because it's much shorter. There's 60 seconds for the annular eclipse flight. And so I tried to visualize this a little bit. So if this is our timeline and the eclipse is in the middle, I allocated 4 minutes for the eclipse because, again, if I can get closer to the middle, I can get more eclipse time. Launch and landing for the annular eclipse window is about 1 minute each. And so if I'm going for about 100,000 feet, I'm suddenly realizing this is the announcement. I'm going for 100,000 feet for the annular solar eclipse, which is part of the reason I want to go to BlackRock. The flight time is going to be about 20 minutes, maybe a little longer. And so if I set it up so the earliest flight time ends at the end of the landing window, and then the latest flight time begins at the launch, at the beginning of the launch window, we end up with our window of 14 minutes. So I put 20 minutes in here. It's probably going to be somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. I'm going to try and get it as high as I can reasonably. But this is a pretty tight launch window, 14 minutes. I see Bob in the chat. Not the time to have an igniter failure. Oh, absolutely. And for the total eclipse, that window is even smaller. So I made the eclipse bigger in here because I need at least 10,000 feet. Like if I go 10,000 feet and then I have a main at apogee, I come down at 25 feet per second. That's about 400 seconds in the air, which is like 6 minutes of 360 seconds or 6 minutes of useful time. So if I have a window of launch and landing of about 30 seconds each on the ends, 6 minutes of flight time, 6 minutes of flight time, our window is 1 minute long. This is very, very difficult. This right here is going to be the magnum opus of this whole project. It's going to come down to just a sliver of time when there's the most anticipation. So how am I actually going to do this? Launch rehearsals are a big one. So this was something we did back on MIT Rocket Team. When we were getting better at launch ops, we would go out onto the soccer field with this, with a 6-inch rocket without any propellant or charges in it or anything. But we would set it up on our like home built tower, and we would pretend to turn on the avionics, and then we would pretend to have a battery failure. Then we'd take it down, take it apart, replace the battery, put it back up, and then see how long it took us. So now we have something to use for pad lifetime. We have something to put in our operations. And that's something that's going to be crucial for this and for hitting that window on the day of. We're going to do so much planning, perhaps a fairly obvious point, but there's so much planning that's going to go into this. There's going to be lots and lots of contingency planning that goes into this. We're going to iterate a lot on the systems that affect the timing the most. So igniters are a big one. I'm going to be reaching out to people who do drag races and stuff, because a custom igniter is going to be extremely important, especially for that first window. And pad life and external charging is going to be pretty important. It would be really nice to be able to sit on the pad as long as possible and just like everything's ready and you're just chilling. You're just there. You're on the pad. You don't have to do anything, because that is additional margin for when things go wrong. Build up style, and then we'll get to this in a little bit, but a build up style test program. I'm seeing in the chat multiple rockets. I thought about that. I thought about that. We'll get to. I thought about that for the total eclipse, especially. Maybe it's only money. Okay, so how much time do I have to pull this thing off? For the annular eclipse, it's about 259 days from today, and for the total eclipse is 436. This is a good amount of time, but not a lot of time when I have a day job. So okay, I must have done this before, right? And like sort of on Rocket Team, we've gone for 80,000 feet. We haven't hit it. We hit a team altitude record of about 33,000 feet. I hit my personal altitude record of 14,400 feet on my level 3 flight a few months ago. And so this is clearly, I'm pushing my personal boundaries a lot with this. So what makes me think I can actually do this? It's mostly the flight test program, which we're going to go. I hope you like Open Rocket, because I have a lot of Open Rocket screenshots coming. And like, I'll admit the following slides have a lot of optimism. I'm extremely excited about this project. I am pretty optimistic about my abilities of the next few months to get this thing done. But I do have a method to the madness, so that way I don't completely go insane and maintain, rule number 3 of this project. Have fun with it. So the flight test philosophy is start with the simplest thing, build up as fast as possible. So we're going in a way that, like, hopefully I have to build the thing I built first once, and then I add on the next thing and add on the next thing. Whatever works. Minimize new stuff for Eclipse Day. So whatever flies on Eclipse Day will have flown already. That's a hard rule, unless there's like critical fixes. And only the critical fixes will change between whatever worked last and what's going to fly on Eclipse Day. No new stuff. Whatever works last by August 14th, that's 2 months before Eclipse Day, will fly on Eclipse Day. This is just that way I have time to get ready. So for the annular eclipse, we're going to focus on the annular eclipse because, again, I'm going for 100,000 feet. That's far above my current capabilities. I have a pretty long way to go. So first test, I'm going for February 12th, where I'm going to try and fly the sustainer. This is going to be a 2-stage. And so that rocket looks kind of like this. It has the avionics. It has a deployment scheme for the final rocket, and then I'm reusing my fin can from my L3. Fairly simple. I have almost everything in the garage for this flight. There's still some building to do, but we're gonna get there. So next, this is probably the most important test of this whole program, is sometime in March. Is I want to get my minimum diameter booster fin can. So the reason I'm doing the booster fin can first is because it's going to be way easier The booster, the booster only has to get to like Mach 1.5, Mach 1.2 on the big flight. It's probably going to go faster on this flight. The fins are a little bit massive for what it needs to do here. But if this works, this is sort of the threshold. Like if I can get, I want 100,000 feet, but I show up with this rocket in BlackRock and get footage of the eclipse, this is a win. This right here is the minimum viable product. This right here is the most important test. I need this to work before I get anything bigger than this. The next is a staging test. We've done some two-stage stuff on Rocket Team. I've done some two-stage stuff since then. If you watch my videos or Joe's videos, you'll see what I mean. This is a minimum diameter two-stage, and this is just, a little bit more altitude. The upper section is still the same. This flight's new stuff would be the sustainer fin can, the booster avionics recovery, and some cameras on the booster. The upper section still hasn't changed from the first test. The sustainer fin can is the biggest scary thing in my head, apart from this staging. And then the last thing in the test program is the full altitude test with realistic ops and timing practice. Hopefully it's the exact same rocket that flew before, just with bigger motors. And I want to do it at BlackRock, so that way, where's the image? Show me the image. There you go. I want to do it at BlackRock, so I get experience at BlackRock. And so this is the launch rehearsal. And if it doesn't work on the first test, it very well might not. I have a choice of being able to go for the backup window or reverting back to the March configuration, the single stage configuration, which if this doesn't pass the flight test, I'll probably do, just because I will have been building this rocket up for the last 6 months, and I won't have 6 months. And as long as I have something that works, as long as I can get something out there, deploy some cameras, that's what I'm really going after here. So again, super optimistic. However, we're going to be really strict about what worked last, and whatever worked last is gonna be what flies, because on Eclipse Day, it's just got to be smooth. So for flight number 2, the test program's a lot less fleshed out because it's so much lower altitude, and I've done that altitude a bunch of times. So ideally, this build starts before the annular flight. In my dream optimism world, the June flight test from this slide works. It's just like, great. I maybe need to make a couple of critical fixes. I need to assemble the motors, but I'm good. Then I can start preparing for flight number 2. This is obviously not going to happen, but I can dream. So in October, the full altitude and ops test will probably be in January. It's going to be a single stage, probably 6-inch diameter rocket, nothing insane. And then backup window in February. And if those don't work out, then I'll probably fly the single stage configuration from before with a smaller motor, which would be a little disappointing, just because I want to fly more cameras, but it would still work and it would still be a success. Again, we're building up as much as we can, and whatever worked last is what's going to fly. The final day last time was August 14th. This one is February 8th. Because Eclipse Week is Eclipse Day is April 8th, and Eclipse Week number 2 is April 4th through 9th. So you might have had a question this entire time. What about the clouds? What am I going to do if I show up and there's clouds? To that I say, yeah, that would be a huge bummer. But more realistically, I want to do a balloon as a backup. Like, I know requirement number 1 is that I'm going to use rockets, but requirement number 3 is that I'm going to have fun with it. And if there are clouds, especially on the total eclipse day, for the annular eclipse, I'm less, because BlackRock is such a storied rocketry location. I really want to get a rocket up for that one. But for the total eclipse, especially in April, the weather might be terrible. Like, April is there, it rains all over the place, especially along the path of totality in April. So I'm hoping to have a balloon as a backup. And this is really popular. So there's actually a whole nationwide eclipse ballooning project. If you want to do something like this, it's like there are tons of resources out there. So I'm pretty confident being able to put this together as a backup. I also have a bunch of friends who have done balloon stuff at one time or another. So now we come to, where am I going to do this for the total eclipse? And this is where I actually ask for your help, because I don't yet have a launch location for the total eclipse. I'm looking for 10,000 feet above ground level or more in the path of totality. There's a few places I've looked at. There used to be a launch site in Asa, Texas, but that no longer exists. I've been talking to Austin area about Hutto. There's a couple in upstate New York. So if you're from Erg or Mars and you're in the crowd, please send me an email, because your launch sites are in the path of totality. But really 10,000 feet is about as low as I can get, because again, I need 6 minutes. And even with a main at apogee, I guess I could do a really big main at apogee. But even with a main at apogee, that's still only 6 minutes. That's still a 1 minute launch window. The higher, the better. So I'm still looking for a launch location. This may require a one-off agreement with a landowner somewhere in South Texas or the Midwest or upstate New York. And even then, it's like pretty high chance of some clouds. So it might end up being a balloon and a rocket that wishes it could fly. I hope not. I hope the weather works out pretty well for us. But this is probably the biggest problem I have going forward. And here's the path of totality again. I zoomed in a little bit. It goes right in between like Austin and Dallas. So it seems like there should be a lot of sites. It seems like there should be a lot of sites in this area, but a lot of them are right along the edge. So like Apache Pass and Hearn are like within like 10 miles of the path of totality, but they're not in the path of totality. It goes over Arkansas, goes over the corner of St. Louis, a little bit of Kentucky, a lot of Indiana, Ohio, goes straight over the Great Lakes, which has brought up some really crazy launch ideas in my head. Rochester, Burlington, Vermont. If you're in the Burlington, Vermont, or if you fly out of Burlington, Vermont, I think you also have a launch site in the path of totality. And it goes into Maine. But yeah, this is a big thing. So if you or someone has a launch site that is somewhere along this path, please DM me here, find me on Twitter, find me on YouTube. You should be, I think my email is in here too. Other things on my mind that are the big ones, launch pad for the annular eclipse. I think all of these are in work somewhat, but again, if you know something about this, I would really appreciate some help. For a launch pad for the annular eclipse, design review for the 100K rocket. I am getting more and more confident as I learn from everybody. As I learn from everybody, but I would love another set of eyes, or like 3 or 4. If you have nice used cameras for flight or for the ground, or solar tracking telescopes, and you want to help with this one-off thing, let me know. But that's it. That's what I got. Thank you for watching. You can subscribe on YouTube, where I'm going to be posting more videos about this project. And yeah, I'm seeing some more questions come in the chat, so I'm gonna answer them. What about, I'm seeing a bunch of launch site suggestions. This is awesome. Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna take some notes. I see Hondo. I'm not sure where is Hondo. Here's what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to pull up this map. I'm going to pull up this map for the total eclipse. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to look up some of these places. I'm seeing there's probably some questions that have been waiting a lot. So I'm going to go into the question and answer. We can't see your pictures. You're not screen sharing. I think I fixed this. Did you ever fly at CMAS during your stay at MIT? Yes, I did. I flew at CMAS a few times. That is, I reflew my L1 rocket there. We helped some students get their L1s from CMAS. We also flew out of MMMSC back when they had the Berwick site. So yes, we did. Frank D'Angelo, I still talk to from time to time. Does NASA launch sounding rockets to watch eclipses? Yes, they have. In 1970, there was a total solar eclipse that went over Wallops, and they launched like 27 or something. It was something else. I'm sure they have papers from that. I haven't read them yet, but yes, they do. Ask about the eclipse that went over Wallops. There you go. Oh, it looks like there's some just chatting in here. What about Hondo? Okay, that's where I was at. Hondo, Texas. Oh, it does look like Hondo is on the path of totality. Jim, is there a site in Hondo? West of, okay. There's two different, I'm looking at the Q&A and the chat at the same time. What about Hondo? Muncie, Indiana will get there next, near Dayton next. West of San Antonio. Okay. Hondo is on the path of totality. I'm seeing how big of an airframe is needed for an Insta360. So I made a like case for an Insta360 to like route Kevlar around it because it's got a 1/4-20 at the bottom. Oh, actually, do I have it with me? I don't think I have it with me. I do not. It's got a 1/4-20 at the bottom, which is good for an eye bolt, but I was really worried it would unscrew itself. So I ended up making a case that goes all the way around it. So I could route. So I routed the recovery lines around it and then routed them through the eye bolt so it wouldn't unscrew all the way. That case fit in a 3-inch airframe. You might be able to go a little bit smaller. You might, I forget which one is 66 millimeters. I want to say it's BT80. It might be able to fit in there if you go a little bit slimmer. But they're fairly chunky. I don't think you could fit one in a 54 millimeter, at least not with like recovery line around it. You might be able to slide it, like just barely slide it into a 54 millimeter airframe, but not more than. But I'm not smaller than that for sure. It's a pretty chunky camera, but it's absolutely worth it for me. Talk to Art Applewhite. Okay. I will do that. Muncie, Indiana. Muncie, Indiana. Muncie is also on the path of totality, it seems. Where is AMA site? Okay, and then Evansville. I'm gonna have to circle back. I'm running out of time here. I'll have to send some emails, but that's exactly what I was hoping for. So thank you. Evansville is also on the path of totality. I wonder where that site is relative to Evansville, because if it's way south, it's going to be out. Where will I post the results? It will be. Where will I post the results? You can find my YouTube channel. It's just the one with my name. The @ is like my name and some number that YouTube gave me. I think it's 6473 and Andrew Adams 6473. It's a picture of me. There's not a ton of videos on there yet. Making the videos takes a lot longer than I thought it would. I might end up posting more recaps. But I'm realizing I have 5 seconds left in the session. So thank you for coming. I'm going to continue answering questions for a little bit here. And let me know if you have more thoughts. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go back to the chat here. Thank you for coming. Chad Ring, Evansville, Art Applewhite for Hondo, AMA site. Might have several sites that decide between 1 to 2 weeks based on cloud cover. Yeah, I've thought about that too. The hardest part about that one is the launch pads and stuff, and like coordinating several separate groups with a launch pad. I may end up having to like get a trailer and like drive to wherever with my own launch pad and just commit a few days before, which would be quite a challenge, but maybe what I need to do. Let's see. Did I get to all the questions? I think I missed one. Oh, one of them was what about Hondo? Hondo is on the path. I'm going to find that site. How big of an airframe is needed? I did answer that. Oh, did I not click? Oh, the check mark is how you say you answered the questions. Yes. Very good. Okay. Gerard, I don't know what you meant by Bob Mark Bundick. But I'm going to put answered because I read it. I think that's everything. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to stop the broadcast here. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your Narcon. I hope to talk to you soon.